friends of Sarawak Museum for the invitation to share some of our findings from our work into my grandfather's history. So this work started when my father was still around 30 years ago. So I started digging up about this grandfather to understand better about him. So over time, I was able to gather a family narrative of what he is. But as the title tells you, what they told me about who he is was quite different from what I found out. It's not so much deliberately, but as you may know, memory fades. People tell stories differently, and the facts do not tally. So what I'm going to share with you are some of what I have discovered, but it won't be the whole thing. So to read the whole thing, you have to read the book. But I will tell you the highlights so that hopefully one of the positive outcome of the talk is you are motivated to write your family history as well. So that's one way you can learn from this, benefit from today's talk. So one of the message I want to send across is family history is not about the rich and famous. We may not know any better. Everybody has a history or a story to tell, and along the way you might discover what great things your family or your ancestors have done in a way that nobody appreciates and it's never been published before. So in doing so, you really find out who you really are, which families, what sort of family background you come from. And one of the things I need to emphasize today, time's essence, because a lot of materials are lost. A lot of our seniors go to the grave with the knowledge, which is lost forever. And with a lot of us traveling, have children overseas, and when they are interested to find out more, they will never find out all this information. So I found that it was a burden for me to gather such information from my children and from my relative going forward, so that when they want to find out more, the materials are already gathered in one place. And a very important part, if you want to find out the motivation, other part of motivation you read, watch this cartoon called Coco, produced by Disney Pixar. It's about a little boy who went to the underworld to find his grandfather. And there are a lot of principles that can be had from watching this cartoon. One of them is we celebrate the lives of those who pass away by not mourning but remembering them. That's an important message to send across. And other famous people have talked about what is the value of remembering our past. People without knowledge of their past origin culture is like a tree without roots. And tree without roots do not grow strong, and they cannot withstand strong winds. So these are very useful thoughts to think about, and hopefully it can motivate you to start the effort. So I'll use this framework to explain my journey. The starting point is how we know, which is based on the family narrative. It may not be perfect. It's like trying to fit together a jigsaw puzzle with a very fake picture in mind. Along the way, you find jigsaw pieces that you're trying to fit in, and you found out that there'll be pieces you thought you know, but which are not true. Parts of the family history that you don't know that you discover is part of your family history, and at that extreme end, there will be things that you never know, or you never know, because they're waiting to be discovered. But the line between these squares are very fine and blurred. You can argue that one fact falls in one quadrant and not the other quadrant. So into the real story. So this is a family tree that I put together by my grandfather. He's the one in black and white in the second row. His parents, Lee Hing-Yan, and the mother came to Kuching after he first arrived, and he had a brother in Singapore who set up shop in North Bridge Road, and he has a elder sister, and two younger sisters. As you may see, we don't have picture there, and also a precise name of this name of these characters. Why? Because the memories, nobody recalls whether it's really one sister or two sisters. And what's the names? And the names are very interesting because most of the time, people can't remember the girl's name. And often the girl's name, as you found out as I go along, some of the girls are very simple. So some of the girls probably have 大女、小女、二女、三女. That's the name. It's not proper. It's just a way to identify an individual. So here you can see we don't have too much information on certain people, and I will during the talk about how I found out some more about such people, such individual, and some of them are not even sure they exist, to be sure. So that's why it's important now, while we are still around, help to record some of these things, so that it reaffirms something that nobody knows about. So this is my great-grandfather's tomb and graveyard. It is found in Paternal Road in front of PWD office. He's still there after all these years. It's the joint tomb with his wife, and I was told that there is probably another tomb at the back of one of the grandchildren who died. One of the children who died, they were also buried behind. And these are useful because part of the family history process is to go grave digging. You have to look at the inscription on the grave to find out your ancestral home, where they come from. It is from this inscription that I found out where my ancestral village is in China, and that's why I started trying to dig up and look for my jiapu. So this is the family he started, 11 children. I'm happy to say one of my aunties is here. My auntie is seated at the back there. I'm happy that she's able to come here, but most of the others have passed away. And he has 3 sons of the 11 children. The eldest son, my uncle to that side, and second uncle, the children are here. So to my cousins who are children of my second uncle here, and my father. So this is the most complete picture I have of his entire family, everybody together. His sons, his in-laws, and grandchildren as well. And the best I could date this picture is probably prior to 1955. Why? Because my father is there, but my mom is not there. My mom is only married with my dad in 1955. So it had to be before that. So that is one of the challenges you find in trying to date for those you have. What was the occasion? What was the date? You have to do some guesswork. So this is what I try to construct of the male descendants since then. Going forward, the top one is my great-grandfather, then my grandfather Lee Weng Thong, then the 3 sons, and then for my generation, you notice that we all have the same surname, same middle name, and a personal name. So my cousin, the eldest one, Hing-Yan, is seated there. I'm Hing-Yan. So we have the Hing is very common to all of them. And this was done because at that time my grandfather has a sense of how the middle name to use for the male of that generation. But since then, that was lost. But happily, I discovered a document that seems to indicate this the poem that he followed. So with this poem, we can now restart the system of naming the males using the character from poem. So on this side of the screen, essentially this side towards nearest to me, you can see the word Heng. That's my middle name. So my son is supposed to take the next character, and you're supposed to cycle around the two column of middle names. And when it's done, you cycle back again. So when I meet the cousin, I would know where he stands in terms of whether this is my senior or it's my junior. It's not possible that he'd be so much, the age gap is so much different that he'd be my junior and things like that. So that's how it was used. And the 2 red circle indicate the names used by my grandfather, the A, and the B is the one used by his sons, the 3 sons that he has. And also in Chinese genealogy, it's hard to also figure out the names because they have more than 1 names. The birth name, the person name, the scholar name, and also sometimes, even when you die, they give you a name. So these are things which come because of a challenge in doing family history tracing. So my cousins, Lee Hing-Yan is a retired High Court judge in Kuching. Then there's a younger generation who founded a company in the US, a Forbes 30 under 30 personality. And my cousin, Desmond Leong, who was the editor of Sorok Vanguard. So these are people you might know. And he also wrote a book on the Bao massacre. So, talk about where we come from. We come from a village called Zidongchun, which is in Nanhai. Nanhai is in that. I don't have, let's see if I can project it. So Nana is around here, and Foshan is pretty well known, as you may know. Is a manufacturing city in southern China, which is where the martial art Wing Chun comes from, associated with martial art artists like Wang Fei Hong, Ip Man. So that's where it started, and that's in this part of the river delta. So not just the region not only have a macho image, you also have a feminine side to it. It's also known as the bra capital of the world. It manufactures a lot of women undergarment. So that's the history, that's the fame you have as far as Forza is concerned. So I did visit the place with my 2 kids and wife. When we went there, the village, thankfully, was still intact. The factories have not overtaken the village, but we couldn't find anybody there. So that building with the red banners is actually the ancestral hall for the village. But we couldn't find the Jiapu. We were after the Jiapu. So we were told that Jiapu was destroyed during the Cultural Revolution to protect some of the villagers who may have capitalist background, to prevent them from being punished or humiliated by the red youth. So till today we have not found it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that one day we'll find a copy somewhere in another village. So for now, this out of my control, out of our effort in trying to find out our history. That is a given what happened in China. But our job is going forward. Are we documenting what we have today, where we started from in Sarawak and Kuching? Going forward, are we going to take the risk of losing this information as well? That's where our responsibility lies. So this, interestingly, is a picture I found in my collection, which for a long time nobody could tell me who he is. We suspected it could be my grandfather. It was not until a collector showed me this name card that we realized that's my grandfather in his youth. And that's the youngest picture we could ever find of him. And if you agree with me, he looks very modern, not the Qing Dynasty era, because he was born around the Qing, when the Qing Dynasty was still in power. And so we're still a bit puzzled what was the medallion he was wearing and things like that. So this, thankfully, was given to me by a collector, the late Chan Ko-ting. So he's a very well-known collector in Kuching. He collects a lot of old documents. So these are friends that you find out. They have documents and you can find out more about your family history through such people. Upon arrival in Kuching and Sarawak in the 1990s, early 1900, he actually was told to me by my family, his narrative, that he actually started work as a kitchen hand. And he collected cardboards and sell and make money. And he also gotten the Muk Yu Shu from southern China and sing and sell at the frame maker shop along Carpenter Street. And that's how he slowly started life. That's the family narrative which I myself challenge. So it's a usual thing that you come to China, come out of China, and you can grow, attain riches from rags. But as I find out more, it doesn't quite tally with what I found. Especially when his earliest business like this one was founded in 1906, which is about a few years after his arrival in his teenage years. Lee Hing-Yan is his flagship shop. It's famous along Carpenter Street, and it collects jungle produce, rubber, dama, and other things, and then he would then send to Singapore to be sold, and he in turn imports such things like thermal flasks, lamps, vases, ceramic vases, to be sold locally. So that's Weng Thong is his Kuching shop, but he also happened to have a shop in Cebu. That's the name. There's a photo on that side. So the photo shows Weng Thong, and I was trying to figure out where in Cebu it was. There's a number 2 there, and among some of the documents I found, it's likely this could be the number 2 Bank Road in Cebu, which today is very modern when I try to look at for that place. So that's where more research has to be done. So from this picture you could see that there are a lot of things on display along the glass cases. There are thermoflask vases which are imported from Singapore to be sold locally. So he was also involved during the Raja's time in farming. Farming is a form of monopolies that the Raja family gave up in terms of concession to deal with certain activities like opium, Arab, and gambling. So this one of the activity my grandfather was involved is in gambling. He concession to hold gambling racks in certain locations. So these are locations like Bau, BD, Buso, Sematan. And if you look at the amount here to pay the Raja per month in return for this concession from the revenue that he get, it shows that things have been improving over the years, especially in Bintulu, that the amount he has to pay for gambling has increased, probably because Bintulu has much improved since the early years to 1940s. So some of the evidence are from documents. Some of the private sector collector showed me that they have, and also from announcement in Sarawak Gazette. So these are some of the things I could color from these publications. So Arab farm also, so these are evidence of some of the Arab farm he ran in outliers of Kuching, away from Kuching. And my father was sent as a youth to run one of these farms until he caught tuberculosis and had to send back to Kuching for recovery. And this is a notebook, cover of notebook that was used to record some of the intake revenue from the Arab farm. He also ran some remittance company between outside towns and Kuching. So the one in Kuching that handle is his flagship shop called Weng Hing Look. The one in Barnes Hall. And these are copies I obtained from publication from the Philatelic Society of Sarawak, where it was published by Francis Ngu on how he analyzed some of these documents. And it's interesting that the reason why people like Francis Ngu collected is because of the stamps which is attached to the remittance, not for any other reasons. They are interested in the stamp and the cancellation. So thankfully, because of these people, I have been able to get hold of this information. So he also invested in Bao, the gold mining companies, and also the syndicates. And these are some companies I could trace that he had shares in. And the image is an image I found from eBay. Somebody sold this old share certificate belonging to my grandfather on eBay. So we're interested to find out, as a result, who the collectors are and try to collect them. I try to connect them. And he was also a member of the Sarawak Miners Association, which is natural because he has a vested interest in how things go in Bao. And besides gold mining, he's also invested in coal mining in Selantic. So this letter, which I was able to get a copy of, shows that he has shares in the Selantic coal prospecting, but which eventually turned sour because they couldn't justify going for commercial exploitation because the amount of coal was deemed to be too low, which is less than 20 million tons. So after the war, he had joint venture in other things. The Second World War had a major impact on the past activities. The Brooke government essentially handed over to the British Crown, and a lot of the equipment in the gold mine were destroyed or taken away by the Japanese. So there's a lack of capital to reinvest in equipment. So he has to take a different tack in how he does business. So he joint venture with this Ho Bun Pa of the Tiger Balm fame to start a Chinese newspaper in Kuching. And he went on for many years until he was proscribed because of political reasons in 1974. He eventually ceased operation in 1977. And my cousin, who I introduced recently, Desmond Leong, in earlier slides, actually after his studies in UK, came back to start the English version, the Vanguard. So Chiang Wah-on was acquired by him after the war from a fellow Cantonese who was retiring, and he couldn't find his sons wanting to take over the business, and he was only willing to sell to a fellow Cantonese. And my grandfather bought over this shop, which originally was located at Rock Road, 23 Rock Road, which is among the shops facing the General Post Office that we know today. But this row of shop houses are all gone. and it sells a lot. You can think of it as a modern department store, and it caters to clientele, the British expats who work in Sarawak because of the British Crown, and he was involved in a lot of things, and was very busy over Christmas and sell a lot of Christmas presents stuff. So eventually, when the lease ran out, he has to move the shop to Carpenter Street, number 46 Carpenter Street, which most of us are aware of. And opposite 46 was 45, and that's where he also acquired a Chinese herbal company, a shop called Lee Weng Thong, and which he gave it to his 3 sons as shares, so they jointly own this company, and that's why it was renamed as Lee Brothers Drugstore. From herbal business, they went into Western business and do a lot of import, and that's why there's a need to change the name to suit the time. He was also involved in Chinese community activities. Gong Wei Siu, I think some of the members are here. I'm glad to see them. Those gentlemen in green, in pink and green, yeah. So he was there, actively helping fellow Cantonese to get started when they first arrived, and some of them stayed at his house before they can get a job, and usually the captain, the community leader would charge a fee for helping them, and charge a fee for them staying at the association premise until they find a job. So that's part of his contribution, and he was there for many years. So I'm sure that Mr. Koh is glad that today they only allow two terms as presidency, because my grandfather was forced over a 30-year term presidency until he died. In fact, I found out that his father was also president before him. Because the father was still alive, he decided to allow his father take the role first. So when the father passed away, he himself took over that role, because he thought it was disrespectful to be a president while the father was still around. So this is one of the photos taken with the committee members, and some of them are probably well known to members here. And also the association has been running a primary school, Cantonese primary school, on its 2nd floor of the building. The building, as you know, is in Lau Ya Keng in Carpenter Street. So the 2nd floor was used for primary school, and children, parents can send their children to learn a lot of things in Cantonese over there. And the 2 images I have is a book that my auntie, second auntie, got as a book prize, and it's as her name listed there. The second one is the leaving school certificate issued to my father upon leaving school after primary 6. And it's interesting that the certificate was actually signed by somebody who became his father-in-law. So this person, Cheng, was a Cantonese from Singapore who came to Sarawak to teach, to run the school as a principal on contract. After 3 years he left. And when my father was ready to get married, my grandfather went to look for this chap, see whether his daughter to marry my father. So it's an arranged marriage of sorts. The next photo is typically I think of it is very ordinary. It's just a picture of a meeting in the Gong Wei Siu building. There's my grandfather standing there and with a lot of committee members. And at the back, as expected, at that time they were supporting Dr. Sun Yat-sen in his attempt to overthrow the Qing Dynasty. So it's nothing special, but that story tells, if I dug deeper, I found out a lot more than that. Why? Because somebody then showed me this picture. This is supposedly a wedding gift to my grandfather on the occasion of his marriage in, I think, 1913 or 1915. So it was given to him by the committee of the Tongming Hui Kuching branch, and they were actually wishing him a happy marriage and things like that. And this photo is given to me by Zhu Manhua. I think some of you may know. So he has been very kind to show me this. And some of the points to add is the 5-color flag is very important because it's the original flag that Dr. Sen considered, but it was rejected over time because it's considered to be hierarchical. Because that's the very system he was trying to remove from communist effort to turn China to be a republic. So the red color is supposed to represent the Chinese, the Han, the yellow, the Manchus, the blue, the Mongols, the white, the Hui or the Muslims, the black, the Tibetans. So that was the first attempt to be united, to be all inclusive. The second flag I couldn't quite distinguish, so I need people to help. So the nearest I could find is the red colored flag here, you can see here, which was used by some of the military units in Wuchang in one of the uprising. So this is an attempt to colorize the photo on the previous slides to show what the people look like, and hopefully to need help to identify who they are. Because today I'm not able to find out what's the name and what's the background. So because of his involvement in Tongminghui, he was also Vice President of China Relief Fund Committee in Kuching, and he was among those who were arrested by the Japanese when they first arrived, and among the first to be imprisoned, tortured. I think, according to my auntie, who is sitting there, when he came out, he has a very long beard. So, from my attempt to estimate from the time the Japanese arrived in Kuching to the point he was released, is supposed to be coincide with the event when the Japanese executed a number of thieves who stole kerosene from the airport. And initially, the Japanese want to execute these Chinese leaders, but then in exchange for that, some people plead that they should not. They should just execute the thieves that stole petrol. And the Japanese general, the Marquis, who made the decision, actually on that day of execution, flew to Labuan and was killed because his plane crashed. So that's how he was used. Estimate probably a few months he was arrested and tortured in prison. So after that, after release, he was also forced to serve in the Prefectural Advisory Council to advise the Japanese, almost as a face-saying measure for Japanese, that they've been advised by the local population along with the Malays and the Ibans to run the Kuching. So again, digging down to his connection with Kuomintang, eventually, which was the next version of Tongminghui, I found photos of him and his exco. This was taken in 1947. And this is a letter from one of the private collector about the committee writing to the Registrar of Societies in Sarawak under the British rule to deregister Tongminghui after the defeat of the nationalists by the communists in China. So my grandfather's signature is the second one I did towards the end in Chinese paintbrush. And he was also involved in a lot of events which concerns the KMT government representative, like the Consul General and Consul General from Singapore, Consul General Kuching, whenever they come around to visit. So this discovery of these photos and things and narrative tells me that this part of the story I have not gotten from the family. It seems that he's sort of kept quiet about it. I'm not sure whether it's because the KMT was not popular anymore or what. So it's interesting part of my discovery of the family story. And this photo, if you dig further, is a visit of Dr. Wu from Singapore with the wife of the Consul General, which is Dr. Cheng here. And in digging further, I found that Dr. Cheng has several daughters. One of them is Chen Zimui, something like that. So she became the wife of General Anna Shenut, who is in charge of the Flying Tigers of China. So the Americans have a fleet of fighters in China who used to protect supply routes in China, and the colonel at that time was married with one of her daughters. So he was also involved in hosting the Consul General whenever they visit Kuching. This, I think, is in front of the old Chinese court, now the Chinese Museum, and with several of the leaders. I'm sure some of you would recognize some of the older folks here. I think some of them from community leaders from the Hainanese and Teochew Association. Then also this visit to the Conway Seal with the Consul General. An invitation by the Consul General for an event in 1948. And a picture of the Consul General in front of a building that we know very well, Chunghwa School No. 4 in the old Hajitara Road, also known as the Road Konya. And within the building, he also had a meeting with the Chinese consul people. And this is a photo shared by one of my good friends, San Namping, about his father, who's a chancellor there, the mother also a staff worker there. So, putting together all this, I begin to gather some evidence of an activity that our family never quite talk about it regarding my grandfather. That he was actively supportive of Tong Ming Hui and Kuomintang, which I presume would also took a lot of his time and effort. So what else do we know we don't know? So the other part is that I also found out from a conversation of one of my auntie, my third auntie, that my grandfather's sister's husband was involved with an uprising in China, the 10th uprising called the Honghua-Gang uprising. In this uprising, which has been a topic of a number of movies, you go online, you see 1911 movies, and about 86 people from Nanyang and China participated, and only 72 bodies were killed, were recovered, and they were referred collectively as 72 martyrs. And then following that uprising, the next uprising, the Xinhai Revolution, actually brought down the Qing Dynasty. So now, one of these martyrs was killed. Unfortunately, very little information, again, because little has been recorded and little is known. So I only know that this is my grandfather's sister, and the husband is named Lim. When you look at the list of 72 names, there's only 4 Lims, but I couldn't match it to my grandfather's sister's names to date. So that's how my grandfather's sister looked like. I was looking for her for many years, but I was 5 years too late. By the time I reached her descendants in Moa, she was dead already. She died at a very ripe age in Moa. So what happened is, after her husband was killed in China, she came to Kuching, stayed with my grandfather, and along with 2 daughters. Then she met a fellow Cantonese in Kuching, working for my grandfather, and they married and moved to Moa from Kuching. And before she left Kuching, she adopted 3 Sarak sons. 2 of them are Ivan looking, and then one was a Chinese, and the Chinese and one of the Ivan boys were given surname Lim. That is to ensure that the first husband is a continuation of his lineage. The other son was named Tang, which is the surname of the second husband, in case she herself didn't have any children, any sons. But fortunately for her, she has 2 sons of her own. So that was the practice. You try to remember that at that time, adoption is a serious business. So they treat the adopted children, sons especially, as seriously as their own blood children. And often the business were given to the adopted son ahead of their own blood children. That's the practice. So it's not that they are secondary or backup. No, they are treated very seriously. So I managed to meet her daughters in Moa, and through them I also found out there's one other sisters in Johor Bahru. So again, if you are persistent enough, you're like a detective, you keep digging questions, you probably find something. So when I asked what happened to the sons, I was told that they went to live with some relative. Okay, fine. So what are the relative? So my mother's sister, your mother's sister. I said, then it must be my grandfather's sister also. Then that's where we start digging further. They realize it's possible. It's one of those missing information on my early slides. The phases are not known. So I'm trying to get the photos and the name and the dates of their death now. So as a summary, what we know we don't know. So the background of my great grandfather, Lee Weng Thong, what was he doing in China? Was education background, as occupation? Because I don't think my grandfather could have come to Kuching as a poor person, as the family narrative says. It's probably he is well educated because he writes very well, and he has some wealth to be able to start business like bringing along the rest. And the other thing I'm interested to find out is the Jia book, the family book, whether there's a copy somewhere in China, and what are some of the details pertaining to his brother-in-law, the martyr Lim, and it says just said that his probably second sister in Muar Songpar in West Malaysia. So this section by right should be a blank space because we don't know what we don't know. But if you want to be persistent and find out more, I think it's possible. So 2 months ago when I was back in Kuching, I was busy poking my nose in Kaju Lane. I went to a coffee shop to have opium coffee. Then in the old coffee shop, I found this photo. When I look at this photo, I found my grandfather sitting there in the middle with the Consul General of Kuching there. So it tells me that this photo taken in 1948, although it was mislabeled, it doesn't have the Ming. It's also to show that my grandfather was also active with some trade association. Something I never knew of before. So this one probably is a good way to encourage you to be persistent and keep poking your nose around. This other thing is something I'm still puzzled. So probably some of you might have information can tell me. It's a photo I found on a YouTube video on Ang Cheng Ho. It shows a number of Chinese leaders. Some of them are pretty obvious. For example, the very old man is Ong Tiang Sui, and then towards the extreme end is the Dato Patinggi Adile, the Malay leader. But the other Chinese leader, I'm not sure. According to the video, they said this chap is probably Ang Cheng Ho. But then some other people dispute, say probably it's Ong Kuan Hin. And I am hesitant to claim this chap is my grandfather because somebody might claim it's the grandfather. So I'm still looking for an answer. Who is this chap? He looks like my grandfather after the war, very thin, from the normal field of photos that my grandfather did. So I'm trying to figure out how to identify these people. Who are they? They could be other community leaders according to the label here. They're representative of the leaders in Kuching. So other things I don't know that I learned from other sources, which came as surprises. The chap with the wig is, I'm sure you know, is the former Speaker of the local assembly, William Tan. In the book that written by his nephew, Gabriel Tan, he mentioned that he was captured by the Japanese secret police in prison Kuching police station, and the person who was credited to get him out of prison was my grandfather. Because he narrated that in the book, one morning the soldiers came to the prison and told him he's free to go. So he was afraid free to go means they would be chopped off his head, not really let him go out alive. But fortunately, he was released, and there my grandfather was waiting for him and gave me a few dollars to cut off his hair because his hair has grown very long. And that's why our family know that when my grandfather died in 1959, William Tan actually came to the wake at the funeral to be one of those who pulled the white robe in front of his hearse as a way to thank my grandfather. So the other story is Lee Thong. This story was related to me, my second cousin, eldest cousin, Hing-On. Hing-On worked in Shell, Brunei. So one Mid-Autumn Festival, he was enjoying mooncake and tea with the former principal of Kuala Black School. And this chap Tong told him that my grandfather also secured his release from the Kuching prison after his release by the Japanese in Miri. So he was brought down from Miri to Kuching and locked up. And eventually, when I do some checking, there's an online article about him, about how his wife almost committed suicide because the husband was arrested. But eventually he survived and went back to Brunei after the war. So these are things one could find out from. Some things we never knew about, or it was never in the family narrative. This thing happened. You could probably find out something your grandfather has done. Some parting words to close this talk is: time is of essence if you are serious about ensuring that you can capture something and leave a legacy for your family. To start documenting your family narrative, whatever form it takes, it's never going to be perfect. So to me, my effort is still a work in progress. It's not going to be a gospel truth. There will always be dispute. So also, just talking to your seniors about how they remember, because what they remember is not something you know. It's not written down anywhere. Then you can verify it subsequently. Also look at photos and documents and see whether they can help you to get more insight. Some people say, I don't want to publish, but my point is publishing your family story is a separate issue altogether. Different set of consideration. So writing down your family history is not about publishing. You can choose to keep it within the family as a record. So eventually some people may choose that it's the right kind of publish, or things that are sensitive are no longer there. So for example, a concurrent project I'm working on is my maternal grandfather story. So far my aunties and uncles refused to publish that. They want to keep it internal because they felt that something should be kept private because a lot of people are still alive. So they don't want the linen to be shown in public. So it's fine, I respect their goals, but at least record them for the time being. So it's a jigsaw puzzle where you start finding pieces and putting them in place. Hopefully it's a story that is accurate. And some famous people say, if you cannot get rid of the family skeleton, if there were one, then at least you make the skeleton dance. Which means that if it's something ugly, you can still mention it as a fact, but you don't have to dwell on it. You can talk about the other positive thing about the skeleton. Another story is if you have political ambition, you can let your enemies write about you. You go to politics, your enemies will dig up dirt about you. Let them invest in that effort, then you can benefit from it. So, and on that note, I'll end my presentation. If there were any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Lee. Thank you so much for